Don't drink that, Mr. Wolf. Sebastian Wolf had been holding the champagne flute for perhaps 30 seconds when the girl appeared at his elbow. She was small, 12, maybe 13, with dark braids pulled back from her face and the kind of stillness in her expression that did not belong at a birthday party. She was wearing a clean white blouse and dark slacks, the sort of outfit a child puts on when she wants to be taken seriously by adults. Her hands were at her sides. She was not fidgeting. Sebastian lowered the glass without asking why. 40 years in courtrooms had taught him one thing above all else. The most important information in any case often arrives without warning in a quiet voice from a source no one had thought to consider. "Who are you?" he said. "Paloma," she said. "My father does the grounds here. He has been working for you for 12 years. His name is Aurelio Soto." Sebastian knew the name the way he knew the names of vendors and utility accounts, as information attached to an invoice, not attached to a face. He had seen a man working in the garden on Sunday mornings when he sat on the back terrace with his coffee. He had never spoken to him. He had nodded once. The small automatic nod men give to other men whose names they have already decided are not necessary. He looked at the girl now, at the gardens beyond the tent where his 65th birthday party was moving forward without him. The laughter, the string quartet, the soft sound of other glasses being raised. 62 people on his lawn. 12 of them he would call, without hesitation, his closest colleagues. One of them he had trusted with his life for 11 years. "Tell me what you saw," he said quietly. "Don't skip anything." She didn't skip anything. She had been in the catering tent behind the main marquee since 9 that morning, she said. She had asked one of the servers if she could watch how the professional kitchen was set up. She explained that she wanted to be a chef someday, so she studied every working kitchen she could find access to. The head of the catering company was a friend of her father's and had said it was fine as long as she stayed out of the way. She had stayed out of the way. She had been very quiet and very attentive, the way she always was when she was learning something. At 11:15, she saw a man she had not seen before. He was not part of the regular catering crew. She knew the crew by then, had spent 2 hours watching how they moved and communicated and worked together. This man was wearing the same white jacket, but he moved differently. The crew moved with efficiency, with the particular shorthand of people who had done this together many times before. He moved like someone who had dressed for a role and was actively managing the costume. He was tall, with light reddish hair and a small gap between his front teeth that she noticed when he spoke briefly to a server near the ice station. He had a silver watch on his left wrist and on his right hand, a ring with a flat rectangular face that left a faint mark on surfaces when he set things down. She noticed the mark because she had been watching how the glassware was handled. She noticed everything about the glassware. At 11:40, she saw him take a single champagne flute from the prep station. Not one of the trays being loaded for guests. A single glass, positioned slightly apart, near the personalized place settings arranged for the host's table. He had reached into the left breast pocket of his jacket and removed a very small bottle. Cylindrical, about the height of a thumb with a dark cap. He had uncapped it carefully and turned his body so that anyone walking past would have seen a man holding a glass and nothing more. But she was in the corner, and she had been watching the glassware, and she saw his right hand tilt the bottle twice over the rim. Then he recapped it. He replaced it in his pocket. He picked up the glass and carried it to the arrangement, where he set it down on top of a small card printed with the word host. "How long ago?" Sebastian asked. "About 40 minutes, Paloma said. "I didn't come right away. I went back to my corner, and I thought about whether I was sure. I thought maybe it was something that was supposed to be in there. But then I thought, people don't turn their back to a room when they are doing something they are allowed to do. People don't hide when they are putting something in a glass that belongs there." She looked up at him. "My father always says, the thing that has to hide is the thing that shouldn't be there." Sebastian Wolf had heard closing arguments from some of the most skilled attorneys in the country. He had heard testimony from witnesses who had prepared for months. He had never heard anything delivered with the particular clean weight of what this child had just said to him. He set the champagne flute on a nearby ledge without drawing attention to it. His hand was steady. In the main tent, someone was beginning a toast. He could hear the voice rising. Warm, practiced, shaped to carry across a room. Linwood's voice, his senior partner of 11 years. The man who had stood beside him at the podium when the firm was recognized by the state bar, who had delivered the eulogy at the funeral of Sebastian's brother, who had known the passwords to the estate account since the day Sebastian's wife had died, and Sebastian had needed someone, anyone, to handle the administrative weight he could not bring himself to face. He did not allow what was happening behind his eyes to reach his face. "Paloma," he said carefully, "I am going to ask you to do something that may feel strange. I want you to walk with me toward the back of the house, near the garden entrance, as if I am showing you something about the rose beds. Walk slowly. Do not look back." She fell into step beside him without question. They crossed the lawn at the pace of a man with no reason to hurry. At the garden gate, Sebastian took out his phone and sent 3 words to a man named Terrence Baird, who had run his private security detail for 7 years. "Garden gate. Now." Terrence arrived in 4 minutes. He came around the side of the house without drawing attention, wearing the same dark jacket he always wore at Sebastian's events. He looked at the girl, then at Sebastian, and waited. "There is a glass on the tray table near the garden-side entrance to the main tent," Sebastian said. "It is the only glass on top of a card marked host. I need you to take it without touching the rim. Seal it and get it to your forensic contact. I need preliminary results by 4 o'clock. Terrence nodded once. "Who placed something in it?" Sebastian glanced at Paloma. She described the man again: the height, the reddish hair, the ring, the silver watch on the left wrist, the way he moved like someone managing a performance. Terrence listened without writing anything down. Then, white jacket, reddish hair. He signed in as a catering supervisor. The badge says Renner. He's been on the property since 8:50. He paused. "I've been watching him for about 20 minutes. His movement pattern when he first arrived didn't match his role. I hadn't acted because I wasn't certain enough." "Take the glass first," Sebastian said. "Then hold him on the property. Quietly. No one at this party learns that anything has changed." Terrence left. Sebastian and Paloma stood at the garden gate in the thin mid-morning light. Through the trees, the applause that followed Linwood's toast rolled across the grass and faded. Sebastian looked at the girl. "Your father told you that, about things that hide?" "Yes, sir." "When did he first say it to you?" She considered the question. "The first time I really remember, I was about 7. We had a neighbor whose dog kept getting out of the yard. Every morning the dog was there, and by noon he was gone. My father said the owner must be letting him out, because a dog doesn't learn to open a gate by itself," he said. "Look for the thing that cannot explain itself." He was right. The neighbor was letting the dog out every day and then calling the shelter to have it collected because he didn't want the animal anymore and didn't have the courage to say so. My father was the one who reported him. Sebastian listened and said nothing for a moment. He thought about the kind of man who handed his daughter not rules but a way of seeing, who gave her, at 7 years old, a method for reading the world. Not what to think but how to look, who trusted her to build the rest herself. He thought about 12 years of Sunday mornings, the roses that had won a neighborhood garden award 2 summers in a row. He had accepted that award and thanked the committee. He had not known the name of the man who had grown them. "Paloma," he said, "I want you to stay near the house while I go back in. Not because you have to. Because I may need to ask you more questions, and because I think you have earned the right to know how this ends." She nodded. He could see that she was trying not to show how much those words meant to her. For the next 90 minutes, Sebastian Wolf did what he had trained himself to do in every difficult trial across 4 decades. He stayed in the room. He arranged his face correctly. He laughed at the right moments and accepted handshakes, and made warm, brief comments to the guests who sought him out. He did not drink from any glass he had not personally watched being poured. He watched Linwood move through the crowd, easy, generous, pausing to speak with people in the particular manner of a man who has set something in motion and is waiting with practiced calm for the motion to complete itself. At 2:17, Terrence appeared at Sebastian's side during a quiet moment between conversations. "Lab called. Preliminary only, but they're confident. The compound is a synthetic cardiotoxin, not commercially available, not something you find, something that has to be made. In the concentration present in that glass, it would have caused symptoms consistent with acute cardiac arrest within 60 to 90 minutes of ingestion. It leaves no traceable residue in a standard toxicology panel." He paused. "Given your age and your cardiac history, a death certificate would have read natural causes." Sebastian was quiet for a moment. The party moved around them. "The man with the reddish hair," he said. "His real name is not Renner. His name is Felix Arnott. He spent several years in pharmaceutical chemistry, worked for 2 private labs before both were closed under regulatory violations. He has been available for hire in certain circles for the past 5 years. The catering credential was fabricated. The staffing agency used to place him traced through a shell company registered in Nevada that was created 8 weeks ago. Sebastian's eyes moved across the tent to Linwood, who was at that moment refilling someone's glass with the ease of a man completely at home in the world he had built. 8 weeks ago, Sebastian said quietly. 8 weeks ago was when he had called Linwood into his office. Door closed, voice low, and told him that he had found irregularities in the estate account transfers, that he was going to commission a formal audit, that he trusted Linwood completely, but that his obligation to the firm's clients required him to make the inquiry official. Linwood had nodded. He had said exactly the right things. He had offered to cooperate without hesitation. And 8 weeks ago, he had apparently begun making other arrangements. "I want the bank records," Sebastian said. "I want the communications between Linwood and whoever created that entity in Nevada. I want it airtight before we move. Can you give me 24 hours? "Yes," Terence said. "Then take them." He found Paloma at 4 o'clock, sitting on the low stone wall beside the kitchen garden, with a small notebook open in her lap. She was sketching a diagram, a kitchen layout, the stations marked in careful, practiced notation. She closed the notebook when she heard him approach. He sat on the wall a few feet away and told her what he had learned. He did not share the name of the man he suspected, not yet. But he told her the lab had confirmed what she had seen. He told her that Felix Arnott had been taken off the property quietly. He told her that she had been correct about every detail. She received this without visible reaction. Then she looked at him directly and asked, "Are you all right?" He had not expected the question. He had expected relief, or pride, or the brightness of a child who wanted to hear that she had done something remarkable. He had not expected to be asked whether he himself was all right. "I'm not sure yet," he said honestly. She nodded as if that were a completely reasonable answer. He looked at the notebook in her lap. "What were you drawing?" "The layout of the catering kitchen. I wanted to remember how they organized the cold station before the setup changed after lunch." She ran her hand across the cover. "I've been keeping notebooks like this since I was 9. I have 11 of them. Different kitchens, different layouts, techniques I've observed from watching professionals work. My father takes me to the farmer's market on Saturdays, and I watch the people who produce things, the bakers, the preserve makers, the small batch processors, and I write down their methods." She set the notebook on the wall beside her. "He says the best way to understand anything is to be in the room where serious people are doing serious work. He says you cannot learn from books what you learn from watching real hands." Sebastian sat with that for a moment. "Your father taught you to cook." "He taught me to pay attention," she said. "The cooking I'm teaching myself." He thought about Aurelio Soto, who had worked these grounds for 12 years, while Sebastian slept, who had learned this particular soil and its drainage patterns, and the light that reached each bed at each hour of the day, who had taken something ordinary and grown it into something that stopped people mid-step, who had then handed his daughter not a profession, but a posture, a way of standing in the world that made her capable of saving the life of a man who had never once asked his name. "Would you be willing to introduce me to your father?" Sebastian asked. She looked at him with the particular, careful expression of someone deciding whether something is safe to want. "Yes," she said. "He stays late on event days. He'll be checking the far borders before the tent crew comes back for the equipment." They found Aurelio Soto at the far end of the garden, collecting the wire supports from the path lighting with the methodical efficiency of a man who has done a thing so many times it has become a form of thought. He was compact, mid-40s, with a weathered face and hands that showed 12 years of honest work in every detail. When he saw Sebastian walking toward him with Paloma at his side, he straightened and arranged his expression into the careful neutrality of a man who is uncertain whether he is in trouble. Sebastian extended his hand first. "Mr. Soto, I'm Sebastian. I have been meaning to say something to you for a long time, and I have failed to do it. The work you have done on these grounds is extraordinary. 2 summers ago, I accepted a garden award for those roses. I should have handed it to you." Aurelio Soto took his hand and held it for a moment without speaking. Then he glanced at his daughter. Paloma was watching her father with an expression that Sebastian understood without needing anyone to explain it to him. It was the expression of a child who has watched someone she loves move through the world unseen for a very long time and is now watching that person be seen, perhaps for the first time, by someone with the power to make the seeing mean something. She was doing her best to keep the size of the moment from showing on her face. She was not entirely managing it. "Mr. Wolf," Aurelio said quietly. "Paloma told me she spent the morning in the catering tent. She said she asked permission before she went in. I hope she didn't cause any disruption." "She saved my life," Sebastian said. Aurelio was still for a moment. He looked at his daughter again, and something moved through his face, something complicated and quiet and complete, that Sebastian recognized as the expression of a parent who has spent years trying to give a child the right things and has just learned, without warning, that the right things were received and held and used on a morning when it mattered more than anything. 22 hours later, Terence came to Sebastian's office and set a folder on the desk. The folder contained bank records traced, through 4 layers of intermediary accounts, to a final transfer made to a private security consulting firm, the firm that employed Felix Arnott. The total across 8 weeks was $230,000. The originating source traced back through the Nevada entity and a second company in Delaware connected to a personal holding account in Linwood K's name. The folder also contained printouts of 3 text messages sent from Linwood's personal cell to a number registered to the Nevada entity. The first, sent the morning after Sebastian had told Linwood about the audit, said, "We need to talk, not by phone." The second, 2 weeks later, confirmed for the 14th. The third, sent the morning of Sebastian's 65th birthday, today. "It is enough," Terence said. "Yes," Sebastian said. "Call Detective Sorrells." Linwood K was arrested at his home that evening. He came to the door in his robe and looked at the officers on his step with the expression of a man who had, at some level, been expecting this for some time. He did not speak. He did not resist. He looked, just briefly, like someone who had been carrying something far too heavy and had finally been given permission to set it down. Felix Arnott was charged separately. His phone, recovered from the white catering jacket, contained a message chain connecting him directly to the Nevada entity. The synthetic compound was linked to a private laboratory tied to 2 previous deaths in other states, neither of which had been investigated as anything other than natural causes. The charges filed included conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, criminal solicitation, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The audit Sebastian had commissioned revealed that Linwood had been diverting funds from the firm's estate administration accounts for 3 years, concealing it within legitimate billing at a volume designed to avoid triggering automatic review for at least another 18 months. The total was just over $800,000. Sebastian was present at the arraignment. Linwood did not look at him across the courtroom, and Sebastian understood in that moment that the conversation he had imagined having, the one that would explain how a man he had known for 11 years had arrived at this, was a conversation that was not going to happen. Some doors close in a single morning and cannot be opened again from either side. In the weeks that followed, Sebastian changed what needed to be changed. He restructured the firm's financial oversight so that no single partner could access estate accounts without a countersignature. He brought in an independent audit firm to review the past 5 years of records. He updated the security protocols at the estate in ways that he should have updated years earlier, out of the kind of comfortable confidence that builds in a man who has controlled his environment for so long that he stops checking whether it is still controlled. He also called a woman named Dr. Ingrid Aldridge, who ran a culinary arts scholarship foundation that Sebastian had contributed to for 15 years without attending a single one of their events. He asked her to breakfast. He told her about a 13-year-old girl with 11 notebooks and a knowledge of professional kitchen layouts assembled entirely from watching, from studying, from a method her father had handed her, and that she had never stopped using. Dr. Aldridge asked 3 questions and then said she would very much like to meet Paloma. Sebastian went to see the Sotos on a Sunday morning. He drove himself without Terence, which was something he rarely did. He brought nothing except his own presence and a question he had been working toward since the afternoon he had sat on a stone wall at the edge of the kitchen garden. Aurelio met him at the door. He was wearing a plain shirt, and there was soil along the edges of his fingernails from his early morning, and he looked at Sebastian with the steady, direct expression of a man who had decided how to be in this moment without anyone telling him. "I would like to know," Sebastian said, "what you would do if the grounds did not have to be your only work." Aurelio was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about a nursery," he said. "Small, local, native plants, species that belong to this soil, this climate, things people can grow without fighting against where they live, but it takes starting capital, a location, and time I don't currently have. Those are 3 things I can help with," Sebastian said. Aurelio looked at him carefully. Not with gratitude, with something more deliberate than gratitude, something that weighed the offer and decided what to do with it. "I would want to build it myself," he said. "I don't need a partner. I don't need anyone standing behind me." "You wouldn't have one," Sebastian said. "You would have a loan, On the terms you set, with no timeline other than the one you decide is reasonable. Nothing more. Paloma was standing in the hallway behind her father. She was holding one of her notebooks. She did not say anything, but she was watching the two men with the particular attention of someone who has learned that the important moments in a room are not always the loudest ones. Aurelio nodded once, slowly and with the full weight of a man who says yes only when he means it. They sat at the kitchen table and talked for almost 2 hours. When Sebastian stood to leave, the air outside carried the smell of cut grass and the particular clean cold of early spring, and the trees along the street were showing the first thin line of green along their branches. On the drive home, Sebastian thought about the things that run beneath the surface of a life without ever being visible. The man who shapes the ground you walk on before you arrive. The girl who watches the world with a precision nobody thought to ask for. The father who hands a child not a destination, but a way of moving through whatever comes. He thought about the Sunday mornings he had spent on his terrace, accepting the beauty of that garden, the way a man accepts a thing that appears without his having to understand where it came from. He thought about the glass he had not drunk from. About 4 words spoken steadily by someone who had reasoned her way to bravery before she ever crossed the lawn. He had 65 years of mornings. He understood now, with a clarity he had not expected to feel at this point in his life, that he was only beginning to learn what to do with them. The people who make the world livable are rarely the ones whose names appear on any calendar or any door. They are in the rooms before you wake, tending the ground before you step onto it, watching the things you have stopped noticing. They have been there all along. Notice them. Learn their names. Ask, before another 12 years go by, what they are building when no one is looking. The voice that saves you is almost never the loudest one in the room. If this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so the next story finds its way to you. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We read every single one.